I'm Sienna, 35, and my life story could fill a book, but today I'll tell you about how my 12-year marriage collapsed in the most unexpected way. When you build yourself up from nothing, surviving foster care to owning a hotel empire, you learn to trust your instincts. I just wish I'd trusted them sooner about James. Nothing prepares you for watching your husband check into your own luxury hotel with another woman on his arm. Before I share how it all unfolded, let me know where you're watching from. In the comments, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that might just save your heart someday. I met James during my final year of hospitality school. I was 23, ambitious, and determined to create something meaningful after a childhood bouncing between foster homes. The hospitality industry called to me because hotels represented everything I never had: growing up stable, welcoming spaces where people felt valued. The hospitality conference in Chicago was my first professional networking event. I'd saved for months to afford the ticket, wearing my only business suit that I'd found at a thrift store and tailored myself. James stood out immediately, a 30-year-old financial advisor specializing in hospitality investments. He was charismatic, well-dressed, and somehow, despite being surrounded by industry veterans, he noticed me. "Your questions during the investment panel were better than most I hear from established hoteliers," he told me during the networking mixer, his smile genuine and warm. "You clearly understand this business in ways most finance people never will." That night over coffee, I shared my dream of owning not just one hotel, but an entire collection of boutique properties that would redefine luxury through genuine connection. Instead of laughing or offering platitudes, James pulled out his business card. "Call me when you're ready," he said. I'd invest in your vision based on that passion alone. Our romance developed quickly after that. James lived in Boston while I finished my degree in New York, but he traveled to see me every weekend. He'd bring hospitality magazines, property listings, and stories about successful hotel entrepreneurs. When I shared my ideas, he took notes. When I doubted myself, he reminded me of my strengths. 6 months after we met, James proposed during a private tour of a historic boutique hotel in Vermont. "Someday you'll own places 10 times more impressive than this," he whispered as he slid the ring on my finger. "And I want to be by your side when you do." We married in a small ceremony with the few friends I'd made and James's sizable family. His parents, both successful attorneys, welcomed me warmly, despite the obvious differences in our backgrounds. "James has dated many women from the right families," his mother confided after a few glasses of champagne at our wedding, "but none of them had your drive. That's what he needs." The early years of our marriage flourished as I worked my way up through hotel management positions. I started at the front desk of a luxury property in Boston, determined to understand every aspect of the business. James supported each move, celebrating my promotions and listening attentively when I vented about difficult guests or staff challenges. We balanced our relationship with our careers, making sure to have dinner together at least 4 nights a week, no matter how busy we became. "Promise me something," James said on our 3rd anniversary, holding my hands across our favorite restaurant table. "No matter what happens, we'll always be honest with each other." In my work, I see so many couples hiding things, money problems, stress, unhappiness, until it's too late. "I promise," I replied, meaning it with every fibre of my being. Complete honesty always. Looking back, I should have recognised the warning signs. James worked increasingly long hours as his financial advisory business grew. He'd often come home after I was already asleep, his side of the bed staying cold until the early morning hours. But he always had a reasonable explanation: a client, emergency, market fluctuations in Asian trading hours, quarterly reports that couldn't wait. "It's just temporary," he'd assure me, bringing coffee to bed on weekend mornings. Once I get the business more established, I'll hire additional advisors. When we reached our 5th anniversary, we began trying for a baby. Both of us were established in our careers, and I had reached assistant manager at one of Boston's most prestigious hotels. After 6 months without success, we consulted fertility specialists. The journey was emotionally taxing, multiple tests, scheduled intimacy, and mounting disappointment each month. Yet somehow, this challenge initially brought us closer. No matter what happens, we have each other, James would say, holding me after each negative test, and you'll still conquer the hotel world with or without a mini Sienna running around. During this challenging time, an opportunity arose that would change everything. The boutique hotel where I worked was part of a small chain, and the owner was looking to sell one of his struggling properties in Newport. James spent weeks helping me create a business plan and secure financing. With his financial expertise and my hospitality knowledge, we convinced investors to take a chance on me. At 30, I became the owner of my first hotel, a 30-room historic property overlooking the harbour. The previous owner had neglected the business, but I could see its potential. James and I toasted with champagne on the empty rooftop the night we signed the papers. "The first of many," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "I always knew you could do it." For the next year, I poured everything into renovating and repositioning the property. I commuted between Boston and Newport, often staying at the hotel for days at a time during the renovation. James visited when he could, always enthusiastic about the progress. When the hotel reopened and immediately began receiving positive reviews, we celebrated like we'd won the lottery. That success became the foundation of what would eventually become the Sienna Collection, 8 distinctive luxury boutique hotels across New England. Each property I acquired seemed to cement our bond. James was my financial advisor, my supporter, and the person who celebrated every victory with me. I truly believed nothing could break us apart. How wrong I was. The next 7 years passed in a whirlwind of growth and achievement. After the success of my Newport property, I acquired a struggling bed and breakfast in Nantucket, followed by properties in Vermont, Maine, and eventually more urban locations in Providence and Hartford. Each acquisition followed the same pattern: find an undervalued property, with good bones renovate, with a focus on personalized luxury, and staff it with people trained to provide exceptional, authentic service. My philosophy was simple. Luxury isn't about marble and gold fixtures, but about anticipating needs before guests even realize they have them. This approach earned my properties consistent 5-star reviews and features in travel magazines. The Sienna Collection became known for transforming historic properties into intimate, high-end experiences. Throughout this expansion, I harbored a secret dream, creating a flagship property in our hometown of Boston. Not just any hotel, but the pinnacle of everything I'd learned. I wanted this hotel to be both a business success and a personal statement, a property so special that when I finally revealed it to James, he would understand every late night and missed dinner had been worthwhile. I began quietly searching for the perfect location 3 years ago, eventually finding it in a historic building near Boston Harbor. The former headquarters of a shipping company, it offered breathtaking views and irreplaceable architectural details. The purchase and permitting process required absolute discretion, working with historical preservation boards and navigating city regulations. "I'm working on something big," I told James vaguely when he asked about my frequent meetings. "I promise it'll be worth all the secrecy when it's done." He seemed supportive but increasingly detached. "You know I trust your business instincts," he'd say. "Just don't work yourself too hard." While I channeled my energy into creating my dream hotel, I noticed subtle changes in James. New designer clothes appeared in his closet. He joined an exclusive gym downtown. His previously predictable schedule became erratic with unexplained late nights and weekend client emergencies. When I asked about these changes, his explanations seemed reasonable on the surface. The financial advisory world is changing, he explained. Image matters more than ever. These new clients expect a certain presentation. Perhaps I would have been more suspicious if I hadn't been so consumed with my secret project. Between managing my existing hotels and developing the new property, I worked 16-hour days. James and I began passing like ships in the night, one coming home as the other was leaving. Our fertility treatments had become less frequent and eventually stopped altogether. When I brought up the subject, James seemed relieved to put it aside. Maybe it's for the best, he suggested during a rare dinner together. You're so busy with the hotels and my client list is expanding. Is this really the right time for a baby? A small voice inside me whispered that something was wrong, but I pushed it aside. We'd built our relationship on honesty and trust. If there was a problem, surely James would tell me. Besides, I was only months away from revealing my masterpiece to him, the Boston Harbor Grand, my flagship hotel. As the hotel neared completion, I made a deliberate choice not to place my portrait in the lobby, unlike my other properties. I wanted to wait until the official opening when James would stand beside me to celebrate. I was still working mostly behind the scenes, coordinating with designers and training staff, so most employees knew me by name but not by face. This anonymity would soon prove both painful and powerful. The grand opening is scheduled for next month, I told my general manager Sophia during our final planning meeting. Everything needs to be perfect. This hotel represents everything I've worked toward. It already exceeds every luxury standard in the city, Sophia assured me. When your husband finally sees it, he'll be speechless. I smiled at that thought, imagining James's proud expression when he realized what I'd built. How could I have known that he would indeed be speechless, but for entirely different reasons? The first real crack in my perfect marriage appeared on an ordinary Tuesday. I was reviewing invoices for the new hotel when I found a receipt that had been mistakenly sent to my business email instead of our personal account. It was from La Perle, an exclusive French restaurant downtown with a 3-month waiting list for reservations. The date was from 2 weeks earlier, a night James had told me he was having dinner with a potential client. That in itself wasn't suspicious. What caught my attention was the amount nearly $400 for dinner with 2 specialty cocktails, an expensive bottle of wine, and 2 desserts. James typically drank scotch, not cocktails, and he was lactose intolerant, rarely ordering dessert. When he came home that night, I casually mentioned finding the receipt. "Oh, that dinner," he said, loosening his tie. "The client wanted to try those new seasonal cocktails, and you know how it is, I had to play along. The dessert was for him, I just had an espresso." His explanation made sense, yet something in his tone felt off. He avoided eye contact, immediately changing the subject to ask about my day. I let it go, telling myself I was being paranoid. Over the following weeks, I noticed more discrepancies. James started taking phone calls in another room, his voice dropping to a whisper. Texts would come late at night, and he'd shield his phone screen when I walked by. When I asked who was contacting him at such hours, he blamed demanding clients in different time zones. The most jarring moment came when James forgot our 12th anniversary, the first time in our marriage he'd missed it. I'd arranged to come home early, preparing his favourite meal and opening a bottle of wine we'd been saving. When 8 o'clock passed with no sign of him, I called his office. "Mr. Parker left around 5. His assistant told me, sounding surprised. He mentioned having important personal plans tonight. He finally came home after 11, smelling of alcohol and wearing a dress shirt I didn't recognize. "I'm so sorry," he said when he saw the cold dinner and my expression. "Davidson had a crisis with his portfolio. We had to handle it over drinks. You know how these high-maintenance clients are." "It's our anniversary, James," I said quietly. The colour drained from his face. "Oh God, Sienna, I completely forgot." With the quarter ending and everything. He reached for me, but I stepped back. "It's fine," I lied. "We're both busy. We can celebrate another time." That night, I lay awake beside my sleeping husband, my mind racing. Was I overreacting? We both had demanding careers. Mistakes happen, yet something felt fundamentally wrong, a shift in our foundation I couldn't quite name. The next day, I met my friend Tara for lunch. She'd been my roommate in hospitality school and now managed one of my Vermont properties. "You look exhausted," she commented. "Is everything okay with the new hotel?" "The hotel's perfect," I replied, pushing my salad around the plate. "It's James. He's been different lately. Distant, secretive with his phone. He forgot our anniversary." Tara put down her fork, her expression growing serious. "Sienna, I hate to ask this, but is it possible he's seeing someone else?" "James." I laughed, though it sounded hollow even to my ears. "No. We promised complete honesty always." He wouldn't. "Men like James, powerful, successful, charming, they attract attention," Tara said gently. "And with you so focused on the new hotel." "Stop," I interrupted. "He wouldn't do that to me. We've been through too much together." But Tara's words lingered, planting a seed of doubt I couldn't shake. That afternoon, I called my therapist, Dr. Wallace, whom I'd been seeing to manage the stress of the hotel opening. "It's normal to have concerns when patterns change in a long-term relationship," she told me during our emergency session. "But jumping to conclusions can be harmful. Have you tried talking to James about how you're feeling?" I promised to try, but the right moment never seemed to come. James was increasingly absent, claiming his client load had doubled. When he was home, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone. He showed little interest in updates about the new hotel, changing the subject whenever I brought it up. "When can I see this mystery project of yours?" he asked one night, though his tone suggested mere politeness rather than genuine curiosity. "It's almost ready," I told him, feeling a spark of the old excitement. "Another few weeks and I can finally show you." "Great," he replied, already looking back at his phone. "I'm sure it's amazing, like everything you do." The disconnect between his words and his disinterested tone cut deeply. Where was the man who used to ask detailed questions about every aspect of my hotels, who would spend hours discussing potential properties and design concepts? As my suspicions grew, I suggested James visit the new hotel site with me, wanting to gauge his reaction. "I'd love to, but this week is impossible," he said, not meeting my eyes. "The Andersons are restructuring their entire portfolio and the Wilsons are divorcing, which means splitting assets. Maybe next month." That's when I decided to change tactics. Instead of bringing James to the hotel, I would bring the hotel to James by inviting him to stay there before the official opening. I would arrange everything through Sophia, my general manager, so it would appear to be a normal pre-opening test stay rather than something I had orchestrated. Little did I know that this decision would bring my entire world crashing down around me. The day that changed everything began like any other. I arrived at the Boston Harbor Grand early, eager to oversee final preparations before our soft opening for friends and family. The morning light streamed through the grand windows of the lobby, illuminating the careful restoration of original wood paneling and marble floors. Every detail, from the custom scent in the air to the precisely arranged fresh flowers, reflected my vision of understated luxury. "Everything looks perfect, Ms. Parker," Sophia said as she met me at the entrance. "The staff is ready and all 20 test rooms have been prepared as you requested." "Wonderful," I replied, feeling a surge of pride. After 3 years of work, my flagship hotel was finally ready to welcome its first guests. More importantly, I could finally share it with James. "I'm going to do a final walkthrough. Let me know when the first guests arrive." I spent the next hour inspecting rooms, checking amenities, and chatting with staff. Many knew me only as Ms. Parker from corporate, rather than the owner, as I'd maintained a low profile during development. My portrait, unlike at my other properties, hadn't yet been hung in the lobby. I wanted to save that for the grand opening when James would stand beside me. Around noon, I was discussing menu options with the executive chef when my phone rang. It was Marissa, my personal assistant. Sienna, I just got a notification about a VIP booking at the Harbour Grand for tonight, she said. It's under James's name. My heart skipped. James made a reservation. That's odd. He told me he had meetings all evening. Should I call and confirm it's him? Marissa asked. No, I said quickly, thinking he might be planning to surprise me. Let's see if he's trying to arrange something special. Don't mention it to him if he calls. Hope bloomed in my chest. Perhaps James had discovered my secret project and was planning to surprise me by staying there. Maybe he'd been distant because he was planning something special to celebrate my achievement. It would explain so much. Sophia, I called my general manager. My husband may be coming tonight. Let's not tell him I'm here. I think he might be planning a surprise. Of course, Sophia smiled knowingly. Would you like to watch his arrival from the security room? We have cameras covering the entire lobby. Perfect, I agreed, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. At precisely 5:30, I settled into a chair in the security office, watching the lobby through multiple camera angles. The first several arrivals were the other test guests, industry friends, and loyal customers I'd invited to experience the hotel before the official opening. At 6:15, a black town car pulled up to the entrance. I leaned forward, my heart racing as the doorman opened the car door. James stepped out, looking handsome in a tailored suit I'd never seen before. But he wasn't alone. A young woman emerged after him, slender blonde and wearing a red dress that hugged every curve. She looked to be in her mid-20s, at least 10 years younger than me. James placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the door with an intimacy that made my stomach clench. That's your husband? The security manager asked, noting my suddenly pale face. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe as I watched James approach the front desk with the woman pressed against his side. They were laughing about something, their body language screaming of intimacy. Good evening, welcome to the Boston Harbour Grand. The receptionist greeted them with the script I'd personally approved. Do you have a reservation with us? Yes, under Parker, James Parker, my husband replied confidently. I believe you have us in one of your luxury suites, the woman giggled, leaning closer to whisper something in James's ear that made him grin. Of course, Mr. Parker, we have you in our Harbourview suite for 2 nights, the receptionist confirmed, typing into the computer. May I ask if you're here for a special occasion? James glanced at the blonde. Just a little getaway. I've heard amazing things about this place from industry insiders. The owner and I go way back, actually. My blood turned to ice. You know Ms. Parker? The receptionist asked innocently. We're well acquainted, James replied with a smirk. Let's just say I have connections that got us in before the official opening. The blonde laughed. James always knows how to get the best of everything. I watched in horrified fascination as James continued to embellish his connection to the owner, implying to both the receptionist and his companion that he'd pulled strings to get them this exclusive stay. He was using my achievement, my years of work, as a tool to impress his mistress. Your suite is ready, Mr. Parker, the receptionist finally said, handing over keycards. The elevators are to your right. Is there anything else you need? This is perfect, James replied, slipping what appeared to be a generous tip across the counter. Discretion is appreciated, of course. As they walked toward the elevator, the woman wrapped her arms around James's waist. The moment they stepped inside, he pulled her into a deep kiss, his hands moving down her back as the doors closed. I sat frozen, my entire body numb. The security manager looked uncomfortable, averting his eyes from both the screen and my face. Ms. Parker, are you all right? He asked gently. Without answering, I stood on shaky legs and walked out of the security room. Somehow I made it to the service elevator and down to the back entrance without being seen. In my car with the door locked, I finally allowed the tears to come, a flood of pain, rage, and humiliation that felt like it might drown me. My husband was cheating on me, and he had chosen my own hotel, my creation, my achievement, my heart and soul for his betrayal. The drive home passed in a blur, my mind cycling through images of James with that woman, his easy lies to the receptionist, the casual way he'd used my hotel for his affair. I'd known something was wrong, but nothing had prepared me for this betrayal. When I arrived home, I went straight to our home office. A space we'd once shared, it had become predominantly mine, as James preferred to work from his downtown office in recent years. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and began searching for answers. First, I accessed our hotel management system. As the owner, I could view any reservation across my properties. I pulled up James's booking at the Boston Harbor Grand, noting he'd reserved the Harbor View Suite, the most expensive room type, for 2 nights, using our joint credit card. The reservation had been made just 3 days ago. Out of gut instinct, I ran his name through the system across all my properties. What I found made me physically ill. 5 previous stays at my other hotels over the past year, all in luxury suites, all booked last minute. I'd been so busy with the new property that I'd stopped personally reviewing reservation reports from my established hotels. James had been using my own properties for his infidelity, knowing I was unlikely to notice. Next, I checked our joint credit card statements. There they were, numerous charges I'd overlooked or James had explained away: dinner at exclusive restaurants, jewelry stores, weekend trips to New York and Chicago. Over $15,000 spent on another woman using the financial resources we shared. But who was she? I scoured James's desk drawers, finding nothing. Then I remembered his laptop, which he'd recently begun taking with him everywhere. Today, in his haste to meet his mistress, he'd left it charging beneath his desk. The computer was password protected, but I knew most of James's passwords. After 3 failed attempts, I tried Sienna P9990, my name and birth year. It worked, which felt like another small betrayal. He used my name to protect the evidence of his infidelity. His emails loaded automatically. I searched for romantic language, finding an entire folder labelled "A Work" that contained nothing work-related. Instead, there were hundreds of messages between James and someone named Amanda Lawson. I clicked on the most recent. "Can't wait for our getaway, Jay. 2 whole nights in that fancy new hotel. Will the owner really never know you booked it? Seems risky. Exciting risky. Wear that blue shirt I love. A." The timestamp was yesterday. I scrolled through more messages, each one driving the knife deeper. The earliest dated back 18 months, the exact time we'd done our last round of fertility treatments. While I'd been injecting hormones and scheduling my life around trying to create our family, James had been starting an affair. I found photographs she'd sent him, intimate images that made me close the laptop, momentarily fighting nausea. When I continued my investigation, I discovered her full identity: Amanda Lawson, 26, a junior financial advisor at a competing firm. Based on their exchanges, they'd met at an industry conference where James had been a featured speaker. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. James complained about me in their messages about how obsessed I was with my hotels, how I was never around, how I cared more about my business than our marriage. He painted himself as neglected, overlooking how his own behavior had changed first. In one particularly painful message, he told her, "S doesn't understand ambition like you do. She thinks her little hotels are changing the world." My little hotels, the empire I'd built from nothing that supported our comfortable lifestyle and funded his investment ventures. The achievement he'd once claimed to admire. The financial evidence was equally damning. James had been transferring small amounts from our joint account to a separate one I'd never known about. Nothing large enough to trigger my attention, but over 18 months, it added up to nearly $50,000. By midnight, I had compiled enough evidence to understand the full scope of his betrayal. But rather than confront him immediately from a place of hurt and rage, I made a decision. James had chosen my hotel as the setting for his infidelity. It seemed only fitting that it should also be the stage for his reckoning. With cold precision, I began to plan. This wouldn't be an emotional confrontation. It would be a strategic one. I called Sophia, my general manager. Sophia, I need a favor, and it requires absolute discretion, I began. Anything Sienna, she replied, her tone suggesting she already suspected something was wrong. The portrait we were saving for the opening, I want it hung in the lobby tonight. And I need the presidential suite prepared for a special demonstration tomorrow evening. I'll send you the details. After we hung up, I drafted an invitation on hotel stationery, arranging for it to be delivered with a complimentary bottle of champagne to James and Amanda's suite the following evening. It read simply, "The owner of Boston Harbor Grand cordially invites you to an exclusive reception for select guests. Presidential suite, 7 p.m., black tie optional." Then I called my lawyer. The next day passed with excruciating slowness as I put my plan into motion. I visited my attorney in the morning, laying out the evidence I'd gathered and discussing next steps. By afternoon, I had preliminary divorce papers drawn up and a clear understanding of how to protect my business interests. He signed a prenuptial agreement, my lawyer reminded me. Your hotel empire is protected, but the evidence of financial impropriety gives us additional leverage. At 5 o'clock, I arrived at the Boston Harbor Grand through the service entrance, going directly to the presidential suite on the top floor. The space had been prepared exactly as I'd requested, a small, elegant reception area set with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, but with key documents discreetly placed in a leather portfolio on the side table. Sophia met me there, concern evident in her eyes. The gift basket was delivered to their suite an hour ago. Security confirms they're still in the building. They had a late lunch at the restaurant and have been in their room since. "Thank you," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to do one more thing. When they arrive, please escort them in and then leave us. Make sure the security team understands not to interrupt unless I call for assistance." "Sienna," Sophia hesitated. "Are you sure about this? You don't have to face them alone." I squared my shoulders. "This is something I need to do myself." After she left, I spent an hour preparing mentally and physically. I chose a black sheath dress that exuded confidence, styled my hair in a sleek updo, and applied makeup that emphasized my features without looking like I was trying too hard. I wanted to look powerful, not desperate. At 6:50, Sophia texted that James and Amanda had left their suite and were on their way up. I positioned myself near the windows overlooking the harbour, my back to the door. When I heard it open, I didn't immediately turn around. "Welcome to the Boston Harbor Grand," Sophia's professional voice announced. "Please enjoy the reception. The owner will be with you momentarily." The door closed softly. I could hear James's voice slightly lowered, but clear in the quiet room. "This is interesting. I wonder which industry friends we'll be meeting, probably trying to drum up investors before the official opening." "It's so exclusive," Amanda replied, her voice young and eager. "Do you really know the owner well enough that they'd invite us to something like this?" "Of course," James said confidently. "I told you we go way back. I've advised on all her properties." That was my cue. I turned slowly, watching as James's expression transformed from confident smugness to shock to horror in the space of 3 seconds. Amanda, noticing his reaction, turned to follow his gaze, confusion written across her pretty features. "Hello, James," I said calmly. "You're right about one thing. You do go way back with the owner." His face had lost all colour. "Sienna, what? What are you doing here?" "I own this hotel," I replied simply, "along with the other 7 properties in the Sienna collection, including the 4 you've used for your rendezvous over the past year." Amanda's confusion deepened. "James, what's happening? Who is this?" I extended my hand to her, the ultimate power move. "Sienna Parker, James's wife of 12 years. And you must be Amanda Lawson, 26 junior advisor at Morgan Financial. It's unpleasant to meet you, but I'm afraid it was inevitable." Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes widening as she looked between James and me. "Wife, You said you were divorced. You said the paperwork was being finalized. James looked like he might be sick. Sienna, I can explain. Can you? I asked, gesturing to the sitting area. Please both of you sit down. We have quite a lot to discuss, and I've ordered champagne. It seemed fitting since you enjoyed a bottle in my Newport property 3 months ago. The manager there remembered you both quite clearly. They moved to the couch like automatons, neither seeming to know what else to do. James attempted to regain control of the situation. Sienna, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. Spare me the cliches, James. I've read the emails, all of them, including your complaints about my little hotels and how I'm obsessed with my work. I picked up the leather portfolio and removed several printouts, placing them on the coffee table one by one. 18 months of messages, 5 stays at my properties, $15,000 spent on gifts and dinners, $50,000 transferred from our joint account. I laid each piece of evidence down methodically, quite thorough for something that isn't what it looks like. Amanda had begun to cry, mascara tracking down her cheeks. You told me she didn't care about you anymore, she said to James. You said she was cold and career-obsessed, that you were practically separated. He seems to have fed us both the same lies, I told her, softening my tone slightly. While I was building this hotel as a surprise for him, he was building a secret life with you. James finally found his voice. It just happened, Sienna. I was feeling neglected. You were always working, always focused on the hotels. That's interesting, I replied coldly, because according to your text messages, your first date with Amanda was March 15th last year. That was during my last round of fertility treatments, James, while I was injecting myself with hormones every day, scheduling sex with clinical precision crying. When my period came yet again, you were beginning an affair. Amanda's crying intensified. Fertility treatments, you told me you never wanted children, she turned to James, anger replacing shock. What else have you lied about? That's a question you should both consider carefully, I said, removing one final document from the portfolio. These are divorce papers, James. My lawyer prepared them today. You'll find the terms extremely generous considering the circumstances, largely because of the prenuptial agreement you signed. I suggest you review them with your attorney before our meeting next week. James stared at the papers, his world visibly crumbling around him. You can't just end 12 years like this. I'm not ending it, I corrected him. You ended it 18 months ago. I'm just making it official. I turned to Amanda. There's something else you should know. James hasn't been entirely truthful with you either. I placed printouts of hotel reservations from Chicago and New York on the table. These dates, when he claimed to be with you, he was with someone named Brianna Wilson. There are credit card receipts for jewelry purchased for her as well. Amanda's shock turned to fury as she stood abruptly. You've been cheating on me too. The irony of her statement almost made me laugh. Instead, I continued calmly. I've also notified the partners at your firm, James. The evidence of financial impropriety from our joint accounts raised questions about your professional ethics. They've agreed to conduct a review of all your client accounts. His face drained of what little colour remained. His career, his reputation, everything he valued was now in jeopardy. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have, I replied. Now I believe you both should leave. Security will escort you through the service entrance. I'd prefer the actual guests not witness this unpleasantness. I pressed a button, and 2 security officers entered immediately. James stood shakily, looking suddenly older than his 44 years. Sienna, please, we can work through this. Couples therapy, a fresh start. Goodbye, James, I said firmly. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As security led them toward the door, Amanda turned back, her expression a mixture of anger and something else, possibly respect. For what it's worth, I didn't know, she said quietly, about your marriage, about the other woman. I'm sorry. I nodded once, acknowledging her words without accepting them. After they left, I walked to the windows again, looking out at the harbour lights, reflecting on the dark water. The confrontation had gone exactly as planned, yet I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache where 12 years of love and trust had been. But beneath that ache, I felt something else stirring. Not quite relief, not yet healing, but perhaps its beginning, the knowledge that I had faced betrayal with dignity and strength. My hotel, intended as a symbol of our partnership, had instead become the backdrop for its end. How fitting that it had also become the stage for my reclamation of self. The weeks following what I came to call the confrontation passed in a blur of legal meetings, business obligations, and emotional processing. The divorce proceedings moved forward with clinical efficiency, thanks to the prenuptial agreement and the overwhelming evidence of James's infidelity and financial misconduct. Despite my personal turmoil, I made a conscious decision not to postpone the grand opening of the Boston Harbor Grand. The hotel represented years of my vision and hard work. It deserved its moment to shine, regardless of the circumstances. On opening night, I stood alone at the podium where I'd once imagined James would stand beside me. The ballroom was filled with industry leaders, loyal guests from my other properties, and media representatives. As camera flashes illuminated the room, I delivered a speech about perseverance and authenticity in hospitality, without once mentioning my personal heartbreak. The Boston Harbor Grand represents not just luxury accommodations, but a philosophy, I told the assembled crowd. True luxury isn't about opulence or excess, but about creating spaces where people feel genuinely seen, valued, and cared for. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I'd been creating such spaces for strangers, I'd failed to notice when my own husband no longer saw or valued me, but that realization would come to inform my healing journey and the future of my business in ways I couldn't yet imagine. In the immediate aftermath of discovering James's betrayal, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. Some days, I'd wake up feeling empowered and relieved to be free of a relationship built on lies. Other days, grief would hit me like a physical blow, leaving me barely able to function. During those dark moments, I would retreat to one of my hotel suites, rather than the home James and I had shared, finding comfort in the spaces I'd created. Dr. Wallace, my therapist, became an essential support during this time. Our sessions increased to twice weekly as I worked through the complex emotions of betrayal, grief, and anger. "You're experiencing a form of traumatic loss," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "Not just the end of your marriage, but the death of what you believed your relationship to be. It's normal to grieve that loss deeply." But how could I have missed the signs? I asked a question that tormented me. I create spaces where staff anticipate guests' needs before they even articulate them. How did I fail to see what was happening in my own marriage? "You trusted your husband as you should have been able to. His betrayal isn't a reflection of your perceptiveness, but of his character," she replied. "And perhaps you were both seeking fulfillment in different places, you in your hotels, him in external validation." Those words struck a chord. Had I been so focused on creating my hotel empire that I'd neglected our relationship? It was a question I wrestled with until an unexpected encounter shifted my perspective and Kyiv. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an email request for a meeting from a name I'd hoped never to see again, Amanda Lawson. My initial instinct was to delete it immediately, but something in her wording made me reconsider. "I understand if you never want to see me again," she'd written, "but there are things you deserve to know, things I discovered after that night that might help you find closure." We met at a neutral coffee shop in Cambridge, far from my hotels and James's financial district. Amanda looked different than she had that night in the presidential suite, less polished, more authentic, with none of the bravado she'd displayed at James's side. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, her hands wrapped nervously around her coffee cup. "I want you to know that I truly didn't understand the situation. James told me you were separated, that the divorce was being finalized. By the time I realized that was a lie, I was already emotionally invested." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Because after that night, I did some investigating of my own, she replied. James wasn't just lying about you. He had serious gambling debts. He was using money from your joint account, and even some of the gifts he bought me to cover those debts. She placed a folder on the table between us. Inside were printouts of casino charges, loan documents from questionable sources, and emails from debt collectors, all addressed to James. How did you get these? I asked, scanning the damning evidence. I work in finance, she replied with a hint of pride. Once I knew what to look for, it wasn't hard to find. I thought your lawyers should have this information for the divorce settlement. The divorce is already finalized, I told her, but thank you for this. It helps complete the picture. As we talked further, a strange thing happened. I began to see Amanda not as the other woman, but as another victim of James's deceptions. She had been manipulated and used just as I had been, albeit in different ways. I also wanted to apologize, she said, as our meeting drew to a close. I should have asked more questions, should have been more skeptical of his excuses for why I could never see his home or meet his friends. I was naive and wanting to believe I'd found someone special. We both wanted to believe in him, I acknowledged. That's not something to apologize for. That conversation marked a turning point in my healing journey. I realized that while James's betrayal had deeply wounded me, staying angry would only continue to give him power over my emotions. The best revenge and the best healing would come from rebuilding my life on my own terms. In the process of rebuilding, I found unexpected support from my hotel staff. Sophia, my general manager at the Boston Harbor Grand, checked on me regularly, sometimes simply sitting with me in silence when words failed. My executive team stepped up to handle daily operations when I needed space to breathe and heal. You created a culture of care in your hotels, Sophia told me one evening as we shared dinner in the empty restaurant after closing. Now we're extending that same care back to you. That's real leadership. Her words helped me recognize that the connections I'd built through my work were genuine and valuable. I hadn't been obsessed with my hotels, as James had claimed in his messages to Amanda. I had been creating something meaningful, a network of spaces and relationships that now sustained me when I needed them most. 6 months after the divorce, I made a decision that would alter the direction of my business. I established the Sienna Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping women rebuild their lives after relationship trauma. The foundation offered business grants, mentorship, and temporary housing in dedicated suites within each of my hotels. Your hotels were always about making people feel valued. My new business advisor, Marcus, observed during our planning meeting, now you're extending that mission to women who have forgotten their own value. It's a natural evolution. The foundation's first beneficiary was a 42-year-old woman named Diane, who had left an emotionally abusive marriage with nothing but her professional skills as an event planner. We provided her with a suite at the Newport property for 3 months, while she established her own event planning business with guidance from my marketing team. You've given me more than a place to stay, she told me at the end of her residency. You've shown me what's possible when women support each other. Her words sparked an idea, and soon I was hosting monthly dinner gatherings for women dealing with relationship betrayal. These began as small, intimate events in private dining rooms at my hotels, but eventually grew into a nationwide support network with chapters in major cities across the country. Through helping others, I found my own healing accelerated. The weight of betrayal gradually lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection I hadn't expected to find again so soon. I also discovered a new level of professional fulfillment as my hotels became known not just for luxury experiences, but for community impact. A year after the confrontation, I stood again in the lobby of the Boston Harbor Grand, looking up at my portrait. The woman in that painting was different from the one who had planned to surprise her husband with her crowning achievement. Her eyes held more wisdom, her smile more authenticity. As I watched a couple check in at the front desk, their hands intertwined and faces alight with excitement about their stay, I realized I no longer felt a pang of loss or jealousy. Instead, I felt something unexpected gratitude for the journey that had brought me here, even with its painful revelations. The truth was, losing James had forced me to recognize my own strength and resilience. It had pushed me to expand my vision beyond creating beautiful spaces to creating meaningful impact. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy me had instead transformed me. That evening, I sat in my office overlooking the harbour, reflecting on the lessons of the past year. I had learned that trust once broken could be rebuilt, but with better boundaries and clearer eyes. I had discovered that success isn't measured by a perfect marriage or a thriving business alone, but by the authenticity with which we live our lives. Most importantly, I had found that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly deserve. The journey wasn't over. I still had moments of anger and grief. I was still cautious about the idea of trusting someone with my heart again, but for the first time, I could envision a future filled with possibilities rather than defined by loss. My phone chimed with a text from Sophia. "Reservation system just crashed at the Newport property. Engineering team working on it, but could use your expertise." I smiled, gathering my things. There would always be challenges in business and in life. The difference now was that I faced them knowing my own capabilities, surrounded by a community I'd built, and guided by a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Some people never discover their true strength until everything they thought they needed is stripped away. I had lost a husband but found myself, and in the process I had created something far more valuable than a luxury hotel chain, a life of authentic purpose. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and transformation. And remember, sometimes what feels like your breaking point is actually your breakthrough moment. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to turn your own challenges into stepping stones toward a better future.